Morning, everybody. I'm just going to give it a couple more minutes and let everybody join. So. All right, well, it looks like we still have a few people joining us, but I would like to get this meeting going, and I would like to welcome everyone. Can everybody hear me okay? All right. Well, you know, we didn't get the chance to do this last year, had all set up to go, and then COVID hit, so we were not able to do this last year, so unfortunately we're doing it virtually. Next year, hopefully we'll be in person again and see everybody's faces in person. We're going to make this work this year. So thanks everybody for coming. And I also want to just set out some big appreciation to all of our dredge crews, survey crews, contract dredge crews that and all the plant maintenance workers that helped keep us maintaining our navigation channels last year and meeting our mission. And again, also industry, all of us that couldn't, you know, I was in my office or at my home, as most of you were, but a lot of people had to be out in the field in order to help us keep our navigation channels open. And so I want to, you know, just give big appreciation to those folks. And then also thank you to all of our industry, agency, and port partners that helped keep us moving forward. So a big thank you to everybody for that in this very difficult year and a half and still going. So hopefully it'll end soon and we can get back to normal. A couple of housekeeping things and then we'll get to introductions. I am streaming this from my home. So after introductions, I'm going to ask everyone to turn off their cameras unless they're specifically speaking, just to save on bandwidth. It can get to be a little much if we all have our cameras on, as much as it's nice to see everybody's faces. And if you are not used to WebEx, beware of the double mute as well, but I would ask you to keep your phone and or WebEx muted unless you're speaking so that we don't have any background noise. Questions and comments, if you could please put them in the chat, it would be appreciated. Matt Sanders is my co-host and he and I will be moderating the chat and watching it for any comments or questions. And then after people give their talks, we'll have time for questions. And if you could use the raise your hand feature, we'll again be watching for that and we'll call on you so we don't have people trying to talk over each other. We'll try and handle that way. And so it goes a lot faster when you're not in a room with people. So I would like to take the time to do introductions, which can get kind of difficult on WebEx. So what I'd like to do is I'll just go through the list. I'll call out your name. And when I call out your name, if you could introduce yourself, tell us who you're with and maybe what your title is or what your role is, I would appreciate it. And I will leave phone numbers till the end because some people we might have already gotten to if they're calling in separately. And then if I miss anybody or if somebody joins and wants to just put their name and title in the chat, that would be appreciated as well. And this meeting is being recorded, so we can send out the link to that if anybody missed it and would like to see the meeting. We can help with that. So I'll start off. I am Kate Groth. I am the project manager for the mouth of the Columbia River, and I am also doing a detail acting as the section chief for Waterways maintenance here at Portland District. Let's see, Aaron Brett.
Good morning. My name is Aaron Bretz. I'm the Director of Operations for the Port of Newport.
Okay. Adam Mamrak.
I'm Adam Mamrak. I'm with the Cost and Construction Group in Portland District, and I'm also the Regional Technical Specialist in dredging.
Adam Zimmerman.
Good morning. I'm Adam Zimmerman. I'm with Great Lakes Dredge and Dock. I'm an estimator with Great Lakes.
Elisa Moore. Elisa, I think you might be muted.
You're right. Thank you, Kate. Elisa Moore. I'm a GIS contractor with Portland District.
Amber Roller. I'm sorry. I'm terrible at pronouncing names, so I just apologize up front for anybody's name that I butcher. So, Amber.
Hi, good morning. My name is Amber Raisler. It's no worries on my last name. It's always a trouble name. I am a senior environmental scientist with Moffitt Nickel Engineering.
Hey, Ann Gray.
Hi, I'm Ann Gray. I'm with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in Portland, Oregon, and working on some Fish and Wildlife Coordination Act stuff.
Austin Hudson.
Hello, everybody. My name is Austin. I work with Hydraulic and Coastal Design Section at Portland District with the Army Corps.
Bill Abity.
Good morning. I'm Bill Abity. I'm the Chief of the Regulatory Branch here with Portland District.
Bridget Lorman.
Good morning, Kate. Everyone else. This is Bridget Lorman, EPA Region 10, based in Portland/Salem. I am EPA's Ocean Dumping Coordinator, so I manage the 14 ocean disposal sites off the Oregon coast that Corps and many others use for dredge material disposal. Also part of the Portland Sediment Evaluation Team, evaluating dredge material under Section 404 of the Clean Water Act and NPRSA, or the Ocean Dumping Act. Thanks for the call.
Brian Stebbins.
Good morning. I'm Brian Stebbins. I am the Southwest Washington Director for U.S. Senator Patty Murray, and thanks for having me.
And I have Business Oregon on here. Is that Stephanie?
Morning, it is Stephanie. Stephanie with Business Oregon. I'm responsible for reports programming statewide. Thank you.
I have Carl.
Hi, Carl Schmer. I'm with contracting here in Portland District.
Carrie Andrews.
Hi, Carrie Andrews with Jacobs Engineering, Permitting and Sediment Specialist.
Carson Coates.
Good morning. This is Carson Coates, District Representative for Congresswoman Jamie Herrera Butler. Good to see everyone.
Casey O'Donnell.
Hi, I'm Casey O'Donnell. I'm with the Army Corps of Engineers, Portland District. I'm the Technical Manager for Navigation.
Chance Plunk.
Chance Plunk. I'm with Oregon's DQ for the 401 Water Quality Certification Program for the Western Region.
Thanks, Chance. I think you said you were with the Water Quality Program for the state of Oregon. Is that correct? You sound really far away.
Yes, that is correct. I'm with Oregon DQ's Water Quality Certification 401 Program.
Okay, thanks. Charmaine.
Good morning. Charmaine Vitek, District Manager, Port of Umpqua. Thank you.
Deanna.
Good morning. Deanna Carciello with the Oregon Coastal Management Program, responsible for federal consistency reviews.
Dina Horton.
Hi, I'm Dina Horton, the Government Relations Director for PNWA.
And Dominic?
Hi, my name is Dominic Duvalier. I'm with the Settlement Quality Group, and I also serve as a backup to James Holm on the Portland Sediment Evaluation Team.
Fred Meyer.
Good morning, Fred Meyer, Port of Portland Terminal 6 Manager and Waterways Planning. Thank you.
Greg Spear.
Good morning, everybody. Greg Spear, Portland District, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the Oregon Coast Project Manager.
Griffin Johnson.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Griffin Johnson. I'm a mechanical EIT from the construction branch. However, I will be rotating through the waterways maintenance starting next week.
Rod Moritz.
Good morning. My name is Rod Moritz. I work with Corps of Engineers in Portland. I'm a hydraulic engineer.
James Holm.
Hello, I'm James Holm for the Corps of Engineers. I'm the sediment quality team. I'm also the Portland sediment evaluation team lead. Welcome.
And James McMillan.
Hi, I'm James McMillan, also known as the other James, with the sediment quality team. I'm the team leader for the sediment quality team and also the district's ocean dumping coordinator. So I work closely with Bridget Lorman at EPA to manage the 14 ocean dredge material disposal sites off the Oregon coast.
Janine Castro.
Good morning. I'm Janine Castro with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service with the Fisheries Program in Vancouver, Washington, and I'll be working with Ann Gray on some of the Coordination Act reports.
Jared McKee.
Hi, I'm Jared McKee with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service out of Vancouver, Washington. I work as a fish passage engineer.
Jared Norton.
Hey, good morning. Jared Norton, Corps of Engineers, Northwestern Division, the NAV Program Manager.
Jeff.
Oh, hey, this is Jeff Britton at the Oregon DEQ. I'm a project manager in the 401 program.
Thanks, Jeff. Jeff at DEQ.
Oh, sorry. I think I stepped in for other Jeff. This Jeff DEQ, that's the 401. Sorry, other Jeff. Go for it.
This is Jeff Young with NOAA Fisheries. I'm a geophysical biologist for the Oregon Coast Forest Navigation Program.
Jeremy Nielsen.
Good morning, everybody. Jeremy Nielsen. I'm the president of the Columbia River Pilots.
Jessica Stokey.
Good morning. Jessica Stokey. I'm the project manager for the Corps of Engineers for maintaining federal navigation channels in the Columbia and Lower Willamette Rivers.
Jim Zimmer.
Good morning. I'm Jim Zimmer. I work for Douglas County as the harbor manager in Winchester Bay, Salmon Harbor.
Julia Kiter.
Hello, I'm Julia Kiter. I work for the dredging contracts team for the Portland District Army Corps of Engineers.
And Carla Ellis.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Carla Ellis. I am normally the Chief of Waterways Maintenance and Channels and Harbors Project, and I am currently doing a one-year assignment as the Deputy Chief of Operations Division in Portland. Nice to see you all.
Kate Mickelson.
Good morning. I'm Kate Mickelson. I'm the Executive Director for the Columbia River Steamship Operators Association. We represent the deep draft ocean-going vessels and the ship operators and agents.
Caitlin Kassinger. Caitlin, I don't know if you're on mute.
Is it working? Can you hear me?
Yep, now I hear you.
I'm so sorry. Caitlin Kassinger, project administrator with the HP Construction.
Thanks. Kevin Bryce.
Hey, Kate. This is Kevin Bryce. I'm in the office here. I'm the Deputy District Engineer for the Portland District of the Corps of Engineers. It's nice to see you all. Thank you, Kate.
Nice to see you. Dwayne, do you want to introduce yourself? I see you.
Sure. I'm Dwayne Watzik. I'm Chief of Operations for Portland District. Great to see everybody. Thank you, Kate.
Kimberly or Kimber?
Good morning, Randy.
Hey, Mike.
Kimberly, I think you're on mute.
Hi, sorry, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Oh, perfect. I always have issues with WebEx for some reason. But yeah, I'm Kimberly Gobby, and I am a dredge materials specialist for wood, environment, and infrastructure. I actually recently worked out of San Diego, but I relocated to the Portland area, and I'm really looking forward to being on this meeting today. So thank you for organizing.
Laura.
Laura Inouye, Washington State Department of Ecology. I wasn't sure. Hopefully that's the Laura you were pointing at. I'm part of the 401 program under at Ecology. I'm a sediment specialist that is part of the Portland Sediment Evaluation Team and the Seattle District's DMMP. So I do a lot of the sediment evaluations.
Thanks. Lisa Hendrickson.
Excuse me. Hi, I'm Lisa Hendrickson. I'm the Port of Longview's Planning and Environmental Director.
And Liza Wells.
Good morning. I'm Liza Wells. I'm the Chief of the Engineering and Construction Division for Portland District. And in a few short weeks, as Kevin Bryce gets ready to retire, I will be moving into the Deputy District Engineer position after he leaves us. It's good to see everyone.
Thanks, Liza. Lorna Davis.
Hi, I'm Lorna Davis. I'm General Manager, Port of Toledo.
Marcel.
Yeah, Marcel Hermans, Port of Portland, Project Manager.
Mark Herkenkohl. I'm sorry if I said that wrong.
Yeah, hi. My name is Mark Herkenkohl. I work for Hart Krauser out of the Seattle office, and I'm an oceanographer and geochemist.
Matt Harding.
Hi, good morning. Matt Harding. I'm with the Port of Vancouver. I'm the Environmental Project Manager. Work with a lot of folks from Corps Regulatory and Sediment and Channel Maintenance.
And Matt Sanders.
Hi, I'm Matt Sanders, Engineer and Training with Construction Branch, currently rotating through Waterway Maintenance.
Melanie O'Mara.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Melanie O'Mara. I'm with the Corps Portland District Regulatory Branch. I'm the Eugene Permits Section Chief, and I apparently need some caffeine this morning. So, hey, everybody.
Melody White. Melody, I think you're muted.
Good morning. I'm Melody White. I'm the Acting Policy and Compliance Section Chief in the Regulatory Branch. Otherwise, I'm also a project manager in the Regulatory Branch, mostly in Multnomah County.
Mike Booten.
Hi, I'm Mike Booten, representing Portland District Hydro Surveys.
And Mike Ott.
Hi, Mike Ott with HDR Engineering. I'm the Water Business Group Manager here for Oregon and Southwest Washington.
Mike Dunning.
Good morning, Mike Dunning, Port of Coos Bay, Director of Maritime Operations.
Morgan Lee.
Hi,
Hi, I'm Morgan Lee, work in the Portland District, Army Corps of Engineers. I'm the technical lead in dredging contracts.
Nancy Ahner.
Nancy Honor. I'm with West Rock, Longview, and Longview, Washington. I'm an environmental engineer and co-manage the dredging operations.
Paula Calvert.
Hi, I'm Paula Calvert. I'm with the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality, and I'm the Columbia River Coordinator.
And Paula Miranda.
Yes, hi, good morning. I'm Paula Miranda, and I'm the General Manager for the Port of Newport.
Rachel Stoltz.
Good morning, Rachel Stoltz, Hydraulic Engineer with the Portland District.
Randy Steed.
Randy Steed, President, Chief Operating Officer, Ross Island Sand and Gravel Company, and dredging contractor, disposal acceptor.
Richard Vincent.
Good morning, Richard Vincent with the Port of Portland, Senior Environmental Planner.
Rick Ernst.
Hi, Rick Ernst, Principal Geologist at Hart Krauser, now a division of Haley and Aldrich, and located in the Portland office.
And Ron Flodine.
Hello, everybody. I'm with the Corps of Engineers, Portland District. I'm the Operations Project Manager for Channels and Harbors. Thank you.
Sally Fisher.
Good morning. This is Sally Fisher. I'm a Senior Project Manager with Moffitt & Nichols, specializing in dredging and in water permitting.
Sally Moore. Sally, I think you're muted.
Hi, this is Sally Moore, representing the Port of Cascade Locks, and I also have Todd Moore here. Todd, if you'll step in. He's our Maintenance and Construction Manager.
Maintenance and Construction Manager, Port.
Thank you.
Thanks. Sarah Kohut.
Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Sarah Kohut, and I'm the Southwest Washington Outreach Director for Senator Campbell's office, based in Vancouver.
And I have SEKREN. Not sure who that is.
I bet that's Stan Ekron.
Oh, thank you, Randy. Stan?
You hear me?
Yep, can hear you now.
Okay, Stan Ekron with Great Lakes Dredging Dock Company. And I apologize I can only be here for the first hour. So thank you very much for holding this webinar. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Steve Ackerman.
Good morning, Steve Ackerman with the Columbia River Bar Pilots.
Terry O'Rourke.
I'm Terry O'Rourke. I'm the Oregon Coast Branch Chief for NOAA Fisheries.
And Terry Giroux.
Good morning, all. Good to see everyone. I'm Terry Giroux. I'm the Dredging Contracts Team Lead in Waterways Maintenance Section of the Portland District Corps.
Victoria England. Victoria, I think you're muted. Oh, Victoria's mic isn't working. If you wouldn't mind putting in the chat who you're with, and hopefully we can get that sorted out later, your mic. Bill Sherman. Bill, are you out there? while we're waiting for Bill to unmute, Victoria is a senior environmental scientist with Moffitt and Nichols. So thanks, Victoria. Well, Bill is our Chief of Dredging Operations here for Portland District. Not sure if he's having mic problems as well. And there's one phone number that I see. It's ends in 5414 and ends in 18. Did you get a chance to introduce yourself?
Hello, this is Gary Dillinger from Port of Perkins Harbor, Port Manager.
Hi, Gary. I think that's everybody. Is there anyone that I missed out there that would like a chance to introduce themselves? All right. Again, I'm going to ask that people turn off your cameras unless you're speaking, just so that we have enough capacity. And I'm going to turn it over to Kevin Bright. Thanks, Kevin.
Good morning, Kate. Thank you. My pleasure. And good morning again, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. As I mentioned earlier, my name is Kevin Bryce, and I'm the Deputy District Engineer for Project Management for the Portland District of the Corps, the senior civilian, not necessarily the oldest, but getting close to being that. The purpose of what I'd like to do is just take a few minutes to do a couple of things. I'd like to acknowledge what we're doing here. I would like to talk a little bit about the budget climate, and I would also then like to introduce Liza Wells. So on the first, what we're doing here. Thank you all for calling in, listening to the names and listening to who you all represent. I'm amazed and I am so appreciative of how we, and we as all of us on this call and all the agencies that we represent, try to do business for the people in the Pacific Northwest. We understand in the Portland District the important role that we play as far as helping dredge to ensure the movement of commerce, to ensure the movement of our economy, and to ensure that people are taken care of in the Pacific Northwest. And it's an important role that we play as far as our navigation mission. However, we don't do it alone. And listening, not only are there folks from across the Corps on the call, we have our contractor support. We can't do our job without our contractor. We have our ports on the call, ports that is important that we, the Corps of Engineers, have got to work closely with so we can support your missions. And we have river users, folks who are using, the product that we provide. And I'll tell you, to me, it bringing all of you together in the big we of providing for our nation in the Pacific Northwest is just it's an amazing thing. And I just want to say thank you, because I have heard from some of my friends around the Corps and around the nation that it's not this way everywhere. And I think that we're very lucky in the Pacific Northwest to have this collaborative working together for the betterment of our nation. And when we work together, it's amazing things that happen. And that's what today's about in my mind. So I just want to say thank you from a big picture perspective and what you represent and how we're doing business. As far as looking at the budget climate and how things are looking for a longer term, I know the team is going to talk about, the immediacy of FY20 and what our plans are, how we're going to go to meet the needs. When I look at the long term, I'm really excited about what I'm seeing. As I look to fiscal year, we're in fiscal year 21, where we are in the budget cycle with the change in administration. Normally, FY21, we have a very strong program in Portland District, and as far as being able to meet the needs across our district, and I think it's the same on the West Coast. When I look to FY22, which of course will start in October, where we are in the process is we're waiting for the new administration to release a proposed budget. Normally that's done in February, but with the change in administration, the new administration is taking time to put together their proposed budget. And we hope to see it here in a month or so is what we understand. But I think an important part as I look to the FY21 budget and what we might see, and it also includes looking to FY22 and beyond. I know that one of the things that Congress has worked very hard on, and many of you who represent the ports and represent the navigation interests have been working this in D.C., is that there have been changes to how our nation uses the taxes we provide, and taxes as in Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund, and to ensure that those monies are reinvested. And so there are some changes that we're hoping will reflect in the president's budget, that there's more dollars available for the dredging. So we're hopeful for that. There's a lot of talk of infrastructure. And so when I look at putting the talk, of course we'll have to see what actually happens and how it unfolds. When I look to the longer term, FY21, FY22, I see that support to our navigation mission, I hope, is strong, and that will continue. So I'm very optimistic about the future. We look very good in FY20 or 21 rather, which we're executing now, and looking to FY22 and beyond. There are some changes that are happening that I'm hopeful will make for a great support to our nation, because what we do is important. It's important to our nation. So that's kind of just a very short Kevin's view of the world, but it's Kevin's view of the world, and we'll see what actually happens. The last thing I'd like to do then is, as far as Kevin's view of the world, Kevin's view of the world is also changing here. For those who don't know, I am planning on retiring shortly. I'll retire at the end of May, and so we're in the process of transitioning the senior civilian position in the Portland District to Miss Liza Wells. And Liz, I don't know, I can't see if you have your camera on. If you don't, if you would turn it on, so that way folks, you can wave to Liz. There's Liza. Liza is currently our Chief of Engineering and Construction in the Portland District. Liza knows our district, she knows our program, and she knows especially from a technical aspect. And now she's learning it from the programs aspect. I'm very excited that Liza is going to be following on for me here when I do retire, because I think that she's a great leader, and she has great insight, and she understands our program. So I'm excited to have Liza follow on. So I wanted to introduce Liza. Would you like to just say hi? I know you introduced yourself a few minutes ago, Liza. Is there anything you'd like to add? Over.
Well, first I'll say sorry I jumped the gun on your introduction and you're announcing your retirement. I got ahead of you, so sorry about that. I guess the only other thing I'd say right now is that Kevin said I have been working with the district on the technical side of things, and we do a really good job of overlapping here in Portland District and trying to work together. So I have been exposed to some of the program side of things and some of the external things that go on to really work together with all of you, but not all of it. So I'm looking forward to getting a little more into that and working with you all in the future. It's really nice to see everybody today. Well, it was a few minutes ago when I could see you all, but I get the video limitation. So thank you.
Thank you, Liza. I appreciate that. So in conclusion, as I close things out here, I'd just say that, we are in this together. I am proud of the we. I'm proud of the Portland District team. I'm proud of the Corps of Engineer team. And I'm proud to be a team with everyone that's calling in here, because in today's world, what we do is complicated as far as a federal decision-making perspective, but when I look to the future, I'm very optimistic about some of the changes and some of the things that are happening, that we will continue to be able to provide for the needs of our nation through our navigation program. So I'm very excited about that. I have a very positive view of the future, and I'm also thankful for Ms. Liza as she takes over as the Deputy District Engineer for Project Management, the DPM, for Portland District. So Kate, thank you for the time, and I'm proud of you you and the team of pulling this together today, and I appreciate the opportunity to say a few words. I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any, but Kate, I'll turn the floor back to you, and thank you for the chance to say something. Over.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin, and congratulations, Liza. I know we're all looking forward to it. So, are there any questions for Kevin or Liza?
This is Dina Horton. I'm just wondering if Liza is also a Packers fan.
No. I have been working very closely with a Packers fan, you all know, but I am Steelers fan. I have my hat
Thank you,
right
Dina,
here.
thank you, Dina, for asking. I appreciate that. I tried to make it a requirement for the job selection, but it didn't work out. Thank you, Dina.
Anyone else have a question? All right, I don't see any hands raised. Well, thank you again, Kevin and Liza, I appreciate it. And now I would, we're a little ahead of schedule, but if it's okay with Jared, I'd like to turn it over for a regional perspective to Jared Norton with our Northwest Division.
All right, thanks, Kate. I'll see if I can share my slides here. Chances of this working are 0. Is that coming through?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so like I said in the introductions, I'm Jared Norton. I'm just fairly recently stepped into Cheryl Karuba's old position at Northwestern Division as the navigation program manager. So I'm just going to give you kind of an overview of what we've got as a division. So I think, you know, in some cases we get a little bit centric on our districts or I guess from the private side, our specific projects, and this will just kind of give an overview of everything that we touch as a division. So we've got coastal and inland projects, which is not consistent with every division in the Corps of Engineers. So we're a little bit unique, and I think just working on the West Coast makes us, I guess, a lot different. You know, it's something that we always think we're special, but we've got a lot of things going on when it comes to the environment that we work in, the processes that we deal with, you know, the types of endangered species that we have to work our projects within. So very, very unique area and region. So I'm sure there's going to be a lag with these slides coming through, but just as it's kind of a very, very, you know, I don't know, Google Earth level, you can see the map here of what we're working with. So Northwestern Division includes Seattle, Portland, Walla Walla, Omaha, and Kansas City. You can see that it's kind of based on these river basins. So you know, something that I guess, you know, even I forgot about sometimes working in Portland District before this is that you've got this massive amount of territory that's east of us that includes a lot of projects that are very different than what we have in Seattle and Portland when it comes to inland navigation. So Puget Sound, we've got 23 active projects. We've also got a debris clearing vessel, the Puget, that's got a specific mission. So I think the Puget and the Raccoon are the only 2 debris clearing vessels on the West Coast. So that's very unique. I think everybody's fairly familiar with the Columbia River. It's kind of the powerhouse for waterborne commerce out here. Massive area, 485 miles, 233 pile dikes that we're starting to look at repairing a number of those pile dike fields. We've obviously got responsibility for being the home port for the Esseons and the Aquina, the 2 government hopper dredges. So a big coordination effort when it comes to working with, you know, South Pacific Division and Pacific Ocean Division with the work that we do with those 2 vessels along with the West Coast hopper contract. So a big effort by the Portland team on coordinating schedules. big lift in terms of annual coordination meetings and aligning schedules that are based on what we're budgeted for in out years. Something I've been learning a lot about is the Missouri River. So very big inland nav project. Even though it's only a 9-foot channel, we've got 10,000 pile dikes, and we had 3 years of high water up until last year. And now we've got low water, and now that we can inspect those pile dikes, we've realized that about 7,000 of those pile dikes are damaged between the pile dikes and the rock revetments that are training that channel. So there's not typically any sort of dredging actions on the Missouri River, even though we had a little bit last year. So it's all maintained by channel training structures. So there's a big effort right now to repair these features that have been damaged by the last 3 years of high water. And then we've got coastal projects, combination of nav channels, jetties, breakwaters that serve the Oregon and Washington coasts. Huge interest to local communities when it comes to, serving the fishing fleets, the Coast Guard search and rescue missions, and things like that. So it's a lot of low-use harbors, but very regionally and locally significant projects, along with the Columbia that serves, really the world. Here's just an overview of some of the vessels. So I know being in Portland, a lot of focus on the 2 dredges, but have to remember that we also support, survey vessels. We've got spud barges, we've got, push boats, we've got a lot of unique pieces of equipment that are government assets that, we've got crews that staff those. We've got to look at, the life cycle of all those vessels when it comes to recapitalization. So there are some government assets in play in our region. Kevin touched a little bit on the budget. This just kind of gives you a table that shows the trends of where money's been going overall. So this is a breakdown of the enterprise as a whole. You can see what we've got as NAV percentages when it comes to the entire civil works budget and how that stacks up between coastal and inland projects. So on the coastal side, obviously, you've got the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund that funds a lot of the work. Inland side, seen a downward trend on that, and I think for the purposes of this call, most folks are probably just interested on the lock aspects of that, not necessarily folks that are going to be tracking Missouri River work. But so it's a highly competitive funding environment, both coastal and inland. Inland's getting very tough because the trend is down and the work has increased. So like I mentioned with the Missouri River, big focus on that, a bunch of dollars being sunk into that, a couple other projects across the enterprise. So that makes the pie a lot smaller when it comes to funding routine maintenance on some of our locks and dams out here. Again, just kind of focusing more for purposes of this call. So Portland, Seattle, and Walla Walla, you can see the breakdown of the totals when it comes to overall NAV budget and how the district's fared the last 3 years. Still, this was buoyed a bit by the jetty work that we've done at the mouth of the Columbia River, but, we're based on percentages, that's a decent chunk of the overall NAV budget that's coming to our region. And then similar with commerce stats. So these commerce stats are updated regularly. So this is the best information we have, but you can kind of get a sense of the snapshot of where the commerce is going. And then I won't talk through these too much. I'll just leave them up for a little bit, but you can see what's moving through each district. So the following slide has the next 2 districts on there, but you can see what commodities are moving through our locks and dams and our nav channels and get a sense. So obviously on the Columbia, we've got a big grain operation. When we get to the Missouri, we're talking about a lot of rock that's going kind of intertransit between just different areas on the lower Missouri River. So roughly the last 280 miles. And then, we've got fuel, we even have garbage emissions. So you can just see kind of the commodities that we're moving up and down our channel. So I think this might be new to some folks, but I think some folks are heavily involved in this. And then obviously with Portland and Seattle, we've got a lot more going internationally. So here's just kind of a world breakdown. I'll leave that up there for 10 more seconds. Okay, and now I'll just kind of run through a couple slides that show, I guess, a little bit more focus on each of the districts. So, like I said, the inland side, you kind of forget about it sometimes because of the massive projects that we have with the MCR jetties and other coastal work and the dredging on the Columbia River. But very critical maintenance needs on the locks and dams that we have on the Columbia and Snake, and then up in Seattle with Lake Washington Ship Canal. So very unique system out here with locks and dams in terms of the scale of what we're dealing with when we compare ourselves to the Mississippi River. So big learning curve for a lot of folks, including myself, when it comes to trying to use the metrics for fitting our projects along with the projects across the enterprise, because the scale is so much greater. So failure on these dams is, in my opinion, and a lot of folks' opinions, that work out here a lot more critical than a failure on a lowhead dam on one of the systems, maybe on the Mississippi. But very big mission when it comes to scheduling these lock outages. I think right now we've got tentative schedules that are pushed out to 2030, and trying to coordinate that work with a lot of the lead times to get some of the fabrication done and coordinate with industry and PNWA. Here's an overview of the Seattle projects. I think folks have seen this slide before. I think it comes up every year at WIDA. Again, mentioned Lake Washington Ship Canal and the debris mission, but you can see kind of the scatter of where the projects are. So Seattle District serves a lot of tribal communities on the Olympic Peninsula. So big effort there. It sounds like in the upcoming budget to fund some of those tribal projects. A lot of work at Grace Harbor, again, coordination between the government dredge fleet and in some years with the contract fleet, and then a lot of clamshell work that happens on some of these other projects. Here's an overview of the Portland projects. So I think a lot of folks have seen this slide at previous meetings, but a list of everything that we've got going, a lot of small clamshell type work and Yaquina work that happens on the Oregon coast and then the Columbia River, and then couple that with our jetty projects and pile deck systems. Walla Walla kind of gets pinched in between the Seattle and Portland projects and then the Omaha and Kansas City projects, but mainly talking about the nav locks on that when it comes to navigation. There's a big push right now to get some dredging done at the confluence of the Snake and Clearwater rivers, but not typically a dredging district when it comes to annual needs. Most of their dredging is tied to small scale stuff when it comes to finding anchor points and things like that, but definitely a big focal point when it comes to inland nav on the locks and dams. Again, an overview of the Missouri 9-foot channel, 735 miles long. This is a fun fact that Cheryl left in, that you can go from Mississippi Delta to Sioux City, Iowa, 1,200 miles without going through a lock. So very, very unique system, and pretty impressive that when it's functioning correctly, that it's all done with channel training features. But a big effort probably in the next 3 or 4 years to repair a majority of those channel training structures that have been degraded because they were basically in flood stage for the last 3+ years, and now we're looking at the opposite of that. So damaged structures coupled with low water are leading to issues. I think the latest I saw is that they've got 37 areas of concern as of, I think, last week. So that was down to 12 at one point last fall, and it's spiked back up. So a lot of work to be done there. And then just kind of some more pictures that we've got of those channel training structures either failing or being repaired. A lot of the work's done with rock placement and a little bit of dredging that Erdic's done with their hydraulic dredge. And that is a very brief overview. If anybody has questions, I'm happy to attempt them or push them to Mr. Ott.
Thanks, Jared. I don't see any questions in the chat. Does anyone have any questions for Jared? All right. Well, we're running a little ahead of schedule, but I think that's good. If there's no questions for Jared, I will turn it over to Terry, who's going to give a summary of the work that we did this past year in 2020.
Hey, good morning. Thanks, Kate.
Hey, Terry. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
We just had a late question come in from Dina Horton. It said, can you explain more about the downward trend on inland NAV money?
Yeah, Dina, it's just a different setup than it is with coastal projects. So there's not a harbor maintenance trust fund that that industry pays into to kind of buoy the work that they've got. So the inland waterways just don't have kind of supplemental income that helps push funding toward those projects. And overall, the need isn't there like it is on the coastal projects to, I guess, justify the funding. But when we have these big projects come up like the Missouri River or a couple other projects like the Tenn-Tom that have emergencies, it makes it harder to kind of scrape up money for this. When our need goes from $30 million in annual maintenance to almost $500 million to repair these projects. So not a great answer, but it's just kind of the dollars weren't there to justify I guess a continued upward trend like you would see with coastal infrastructure when it comes to deepenings and improvements that promote commerce. A lot of this is just kind of routine maintenance and kind of keeping lights on for these projects.
Thanks, Jared. Dina, did that answer your question? Do you have any follow-up questions?
Yeah, thank you.
Are there any other questions for Jared? All right. Terry, I guess you're up.
Okay, great. Can everyone see my screen here, my slide?
We can see the slide, but there's something blocking it, so partially.
Okay. Is that better?
That's better.
Okay. All right. Hello again. Great to have people show up to this. Great attendance. I agree, and great to see people. I don't get out much these days. I'm sure most people don't, so seeing a bunch of faces is really nice. I'm Terry Giroux. I'm the dredging contracts team lead in Waterways maintenance section in the Portland district. So my group does contract writing for dredging contracts as for our district, as well as working with other districts in our region. And our team also does the kind of scheduling and kind of administration of the government dredge work in the region. With that, I'll jump in. I'm going to give a little rundown on what we did last year, the 2020 dredge season, and then at the end I'll take any questions or comments from anyone. So 2020, obviously a challenging year. COVID-19 kind of came into our world just as we were getting ready to fire off for the 2020 season. Definitely, created some issues, some problems. I could probably spend the rest of the morning talking about all of those challenges that, we experienced as a group brought on by the pandemic. But instead, I'll just say, simply that because of the ingenuity and dedication of our dredge crews, contractors, resource agencies, construction branch, support offices, and others, we as a group, I think we're not only able to salvage a dredge season, but we made it a fairly successful one. So I think just, that's worth acknowledging that we kind of rose above the year and still got the work done. So kudos to everyone here, I think, is in order. All right, so just a run through on our contracts for 2020.
Hey, Terry.
We had a total, yeah.
Hey, Terry, is there any way you can make your slides full screen?
Yeah, I think so.
I found this on the
Is that Siri talking back to you? Perfect.
Yep.
Perfect. Actually, I'm not sure. Display settings. Let me do this. Working through. I will switch to just sharing the screen instead. Is that better?
Well, now it's smaller.
Great. Okay, I'm going to switch this screen over to. Apologize, everyone.
I agree with Dina. I think you just start choosing options under display settings and see if one works.
Yeah, if you do the duplicate screen, when you push F5 and get it into the presentation, and then do in the view, say duplicate screen, it should give you the full screen.
I may have just made this much worse for myself. It's going well so far. Oh my goodness. How's that?
Yay.
Great. Okay. I'll just talk through these in real quick. I just burned up 5 minutes trying to figure out technology, so strong start. All right, so first, obviously, our kind of annual West Coast Regional Hopper contract. In 2020, it had 3 projects. It was awarded to the Dutra Group. Work was between July and October. 3 projects again, Humboldt Bay, and then 2 in the Portland District. So Humboldt Bay is San Francisco District project, and then 2 in the Portland District, the mouth of the Columbia and Lower Columbia Rivers. All in all, a fairly standard year for that contract. We did have a little bit more dredging take place at Humboldt Bay, just taking advantage of some additional funding. And then I guess of note was in the mouth of the Columbia River, less than 10% of all of that material that they dredged at the mouth went to the deep water site. So really taking advantage of the near shore sites that we have, shallow water site and North Jetty site. Next contract was the Coos Bay River Mile 12 to 15. It went out as an unrestricted contract, but it was awarded to American Construction, clamshell and scow project. Dredging was from July to October. Second year of doing this work, same dredge areas, just working within the 1 million cubic yard environmental cap that we have for placement. So just under 1 million yards taken out to Site H last year, another successful year. Next contract was our Oregon-Washington clamshell. This is definitely an annual contract for us. The work locations do change year to year, with the exception of a couple. So it was put out as a small business set-aside contract. It was awarded to J.E. McCamus, another clamshell and scow project. Work occurred between August and October, with work at Chetco, Port Orford, Baker Bay, Chinook, and a few locations at Longview. Chetco, I think we're like every 3 to 5 years there. And then Port Orford and Baker Bay have both been annual for the last couple of years, several years really. And that's been really helpful to keep those projects working well. And I think we've got a pretty good handle on how to manage the dredging there. Chinook, I think that's a 3-year cycle. Took quite a bit of material from Chinook last year, just under 140,000 cubic yards. So great to get that work done. And then Longview, as I said, a couple areas there, both federal channel and work for the Port of Longview under an MOA with them. So a good partnership there to get the work done in a timely fashion. And then the last contract that we had for 2020, fiscal year 2020, was the Coquille Bend and Boat Basin project. Work was actually done in January of this year, but awarded in 2020. It was a small business set-aside contract awarded to Bergerson Construction. They utilized a excavator-mounted hydraulic cutter head dredge. So you can see it pictured there. Pretty unique piece of equipment, new technology that's kind of coming into our region. So pretty exciting to see that work. So again, worked in January of this year. It was pumped to the in-water flow lane site just outside of the boat basin there. And just over 4,000 cubic yards taken. The Dredge Oregon, I guess, is our 5th contract. Last year, fairly standard year, 147 days, kind of more of a return to what is a typical year for them. Seems the last, couple years prior to that, 2018, 2019, were longer seasons. But last year was pretty standard, June to November. 8 work locations, including a couple rehandle sites where we, reposition sand with a hopper dredge, and the dredge is able to pump it either to a beach nourished location or a upland site. And then also, and later on in this meeting, Rod and Ritz will present on some Woodland Island placement that happened, but that was a pretty good project. Total of 1.7 million cubic yards, with, a little more heavy on the upland side, 64% going upland versus 36% going near beach nourishment. And then the government dredge Yaquina, 203 days for all projects. That includes, out of district work as well as mobilization days. But overall a good season for them, April through November. 9 total projects in Portland, although 8 of which were dredged. As you can see, Rogue River, we were unsuccessful in getting the dredge in there just due to the extreme shallow depths in the entrance. I believe Greg Spear will talk about a project that we're looking at for this year there, but other coast projects and river projects, a pretty good year for the dredge Yaquina. Okay. And then Essayons, another standard year, 200 days. Again, all projects including mobilization. Again, and also from April to November of 2020. 3 projects in the Portland district. Columbia River, pretty big year in the Columbia River for Essayons, 2.2 or so million cubic yards there. And then Coos Bay, MCR, couple kind of interesting points, I guess, high points for MCR, dredge material placement. We were able to place about 85%, 83% of all the material in the near shore. Very little material going out to the deep water site. And we were actually able to use the shallow water site with Essayons last year It had been since 2012 since it was last used there, just because of the overlap with timing of the contract dredge that works out there. So put over 500,000 cubic yards in the shallow water site, which is great. And then just under 1.5 million cubic yards on the season for them. I think that's it. Any comments or questions for me?
Thanks, Terry. Are there any questions for Terry? And Kevin, thank you again for joining us and introducing Liza to everyone. Thanks, Kevin. Just looking to see if anybody has their hand raised. I'm not seeing anyone. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I think it was quite an accomplishment this year, or last year, especially in light of COVID and all of the work that got done. So thanks. All right. Well, I don't see any questions for Terry. We are running about 15 minutes ahead of schedule, which I'm sure nobody's going to mind. We do have a break. I'll put the agenda up here. But we do have a break scheduled after Terry's talk, and it's probably good to keep that break in here. We're about halfway through with presentations, so if everybody is okay with that. Oh, I see a question from Sally. Matt, would you mind reading that question?
I am not seeing that question on my chat.
This is Sally. Can you hear me?
I can. Go ahead, Sally.
Cool. I'm just curious if the percentage of material put in water is limited by the availability of the sites, or is it some other factor, such as grain size or some other thing?
I guess to clarify, were you particularly, was there a project or a slide that, just so I could narrow down, or Terry could narrow down?
Let me add this. I noticed in the different projects, the amount used in water was pretty variable. And so what was that due to? Because in some areas there's not sites available, or was there something about the material or other factors that what controlled how much went in water?
This is Jessica Stuckey. I'm the project manager for the maintenance of the deep draft channel in the Columbia, so I can answer that for the maintenance of that project. All of our sediment for that project is suitable for in-water placement, and so really it's capacity limited. We don't want to put material in water in areas where it would migrate back into the navigation channel and it would create more dredging for us. And so it really is a balance between keeping material in the system, being able to place it in water, but not increasing the amount of dredging we're going to need to do to maintain the navigation channel. And then we have a certain number of sites that we can use for the shoreline placement along the riverbank or upwind sites. And those are really dependent on, is it within reach of the dredge that we're using? And so we use the Dredge Oregon to pump material up into those sites in the Columbia. Does that help answer your question?
That's a very good answer. And it does kind of indicate that there's a limited number of sites available, and then the other factor is the dredge location. Thank you.
Sure thing.
Thanks. Are there any other questions for Terry. I see Mike Dunning has a comment. Coos Bay Site H is capped at 1 million cubic yards per year. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Mike. Okay. Don't see any other questions. With that, I would like to still keep the 5-minute break in here. So if everybody's okay with it, we will resume at 10:15, and Rod Moritz will talk about Woodland Island. All right. Thanks. Okay, I have that it's 10:15, and Murad Moritz is going to give us a presentation on Woodland Island.
Hey, sound check, Kate. Hearing me?
I can hear you, and I see your slideshow.
Great, thanks. That was a really fast 5 minutes. So what I'll do for the next 20 minutes, hopefully it's within 20 minutes, is present to you all today the Woodland Island Ecosystem Restoration Project. It features the beneficial use of dredge material, and this project has been an odyssey. Jared Norton kicked it off, and then Mike Karaski finished it. It started in 2015, and we just completed really the biggest phase of the construction for this project last October. It's got a cast of characters, and I drew the short straw or long straw. I drew the lucky straw to be able to present to you all today this project. A lot of work's went into it, and at the end I'll say why. But for right now, let's get into this. On behalf of the team, including our non-federal sponsor, Columbia River Estuary Study Task Force, I'll be presenting to you today this ecosystem restoration project. Woodland Islands is on the Washington shore of the Columbia River, about River Mile 85. Here's Portland, Oregon, River Mile 100, and then Woodland Islands is around River Mile 85. I'll be presenting to you all today the project motivation, leveraging opportunities, basically building on our experience that we didn't know we have, and we rediscovered some things, important things, objectives and design elements for this project, implementation of it, which was kind of a surprise, and then some lessons learned. The backdrop of this project is the Lower Columbia River Navigation Channel. And whether we knew it or not, we've been working with nature all along to sustain deep draft navigation within the Lower Columbia River. This navigation channel has become a marine highway that it's intentional, and it is extremely efficient for supporting commerce. And here's the fun part. We've been using dredged sand from the river to augment and create islands to develop and stabilize a reliable navigation channel since the 1900s. It's the creation of islands that is really important to note. And that underlies the theme here. We need to now, that we're moving forward into the future, we need to seek opportunities to use dredge material to create ecosystem restoration features where we can. Specifically, habitat morphology that we can create or augment so that habitat and ecology can use it beneficially. Here's an example of some islands a long time ago that were created or augmented for the purpose of navigation. The expansion of Sandy Island in the 1900s through the 1950s, the initial island was this little area in the yellow. And then through the course of improving the navigation, the flowway, the fowling of the navigation of the Columbia River, we dredged it. We dredged the river, put the sand in an area, in an island, and intentionally fortified and protected that island with pile dikes. The island, creating a larger island, allowed that island to then help us control the fowling of the river, thereby establishing a deeper navigation channel. Instead of just taking this material and dumping it upland 100 years ago, we created islands. And pile dikes were an essential part of that. On the right-hand graphic, we have Goat Island, mostly not present before the 1900s. And this island was created in stages using dredge material, dredged from the main stem, Columbia, and then we created these islands. We built these are actually called dams. They built little dams, kind of a different variant of a pile dike, to hold these islands. And thereby we got this navigation channel going. But the underlying part is that these islands have ecosystem value in them now, really important ecosystem value that a lot of environmental enthusiasts on the Lower Columbia River think occurred naturally, but we created them. So there's the backdrop here. Now, the motivation for present-day ecosystem restoration is the fact that 77% of the intertidal and riparian areas of the Columbia River estuary have been lost from the pre-settlement condition due to diking, filling, and hydrology modifications on the Columbia. That's what was motivating. We got to address this 77% loss of habitat. And in steps the dredge channel, the sediment that we use. Each year we dredge 6 to 8 million cubic yards of good, clean sand from the lower Columbia River deep draft navigation channel. And we put about 15% of that sand in upland sites, about 10% along the shoreline, and 75% back in water, smartly. We don't willy-nilly dump it in water. We're very careful. Jessica Stokey is very careful to direct where it goes so it doesn't cause problems immediately for the navigation channel. But the opportunity here is that we can provide reliable navigation while also sustaining sediment resources, morphology, ecology, and fisheries, and other river functions that depend on sediment. Solution, use dredge material to restore habitat, morphology creation. All right, so I got it teed up for you all now, but the missing link is how do we move the sediment around? And we have some assets that we use in the lower Columbia River, and Terry and others have mentioned them. Jared's mentioned them. We have the Essayons hopper dredge, the Yaquina hopper dredge. The Essayons is a beast. It's a hauler. The Yaquina is a sports car. It has about 1/5 the capacity, but it can do a lot of different things in short distances that the Essayons can't. The Oregon is a pipeline dredge. She's a beast. She can pump material 2 miles, which is kind of nice. And then we hire a contractor from year to year to help us with the dredging. What I'll be featuring to you, the talk today will be featuring how we used the dredge Oregon with the dredge Essayons feeding the Oregon with dredge material so that the Oregon could pump it to our ecosystem restoration project, which is Woodland Islands, restoring habitat. Why did we pick Woodland Islands? If you have questions why, direct them to Jared Norton in the chat, because he helped us have like 7 or, I don't know, it's like 15 sites. We winnowed through which sites were what. We got to Woodland Islands. Why? Because it's a proximity to major confluences, which is good for ecosystem restoration. Lewis River, Multnomah Channel. It's right at the throat of a lot of things going on with rivers. It's a moderate area for restoration. We don't want to build something big at first, because we're trying to step back into this. It's been 60 years since we've done something like this. We'll learn small and then apply it bigger. It's close to a recurring shoal. We believe, and it typically turns out every 2 or 3 years we dredge the shoal, and it ends up being about 400,000 yards. It has been. So that was a good thing. And then it's a relatively protected area where we wanted to augment or build new restoration features on these islands. It's protected by pile dikes, as you see through here. This is the main stem river. And the area is not degrading. So it's sheltered and it's not degrading. Its existing habitats demonstrate good potential to increase habitat. And we believe that there was a lack of real estate obstacles dealing with these islands. So that's why we picked it. It was rational choice. So I won't go into all the text here, but it is well documented. We have detailed files, actually reports with appendices. But our planning objectives for Woodland Islands were based on a 50-year planning horizon. Okay, this project has to work over the course of 50 years. The authority was under a continuing authority project, Section 204. Our Continuing Authority Program, Section 204, beneficial use of dredge material, requires a non-federal sponsor, which was CREST. The idea was to increase habitat for juvenile salmonids and increase habitat for yellow warblers. And this is 2 types of terrain, very important. The salmonids is in-water terrain, and the warblers is kind of a transitional terrain up to upland. But the key here is that we had to use another method of documenting the benefits for creating habitat. We couldn't just use a normal benefit cost ratio because the benefits are very hard to monetize. They're ecosystem benefits. So we used a system called cost evaluation, incremental cost analysis with a habitat evaluation procedure. The point is we developed some habitat with the target elevation was 0 to 14 feet NAVD. And we had to first, to get to that point, we had to build some base features from -10 to 0. And then we could build the cream on top. And that's what we're after the benefits there. All right. I'm gonna pause here for just a moment. Are there any questions anyone wants to verbally put out there? Hearing none, we'll move on. So this is where it gets interesting. Consider the past to inform the present at Woodland Islands. Let's not make any mistakes, and the best way to do that is to see what the past did at Woodland Islands and emulate that. All right, so here we go. What happened at Woodland Islands before we put this project, before we wanted to do this project? Back in the olden times, we built pile dikes, and similar to what I showed you at Goat Island and Sandy Island, we built pile dikes, then we placed dredge material. 1929 went in the pile dikes, and they connected to an island. And then in 1957, we started placing more and more dredge material there. All right, so this is a pile dike and dredge material placement timeline. In the early 1970s, we placed a lot of dredge material, and we built up a continuous island chain along Woodland Islands, forming the Woodland Islands. And then by 1983, we started leaving it alone. So it became dredge material placement period. Then it went to evolution of dredge material placement, and channels started to form, and these islands started to equilibrate with the environment. Same thing for 1989. You see the islands change a little bit. And then until 2011, they changed, and now they have channels, and they basically established vegetation, which is very important. It's not just it's sufficient to place the dredge material, as we saw here. Okay, but then we got to get vegetation on the ground. That's a necessary condition. Keep that in mind. So here's what the Woodland Islands look like now. Now, let's take a little safari. All right, right here. We're going to just do a real quick field trip over to this location, see what's on the ground during a freshet. And what we see is there's these tidal waterways that during the freshet kind of inundate areas. You see the grasses are inundated. This is a perfect place for salmonids to come in when they're migrating downstream in the spring and just, feed and get bioenergized in these pools of water with good refugium food. And then the highlands are about 4.3 meters NAVD. So this is all dredge material. This was placed in the 70s, early 70s. And when you take some shallow cores, you can see it's all sand. The top of it is brown, and as you get down further, it turns to the gray dredge material. But this is all sand, and it's supporting vegetation. And the key is to get into the right elevation zone. So that led us to, after many alternatives, these two features that we wanted to build, downstream feature and upstream feature. Okay? Upstream feature was going to be 150,000 cubic yards, and downstream feature was going to be 250,000 cubic yards, for a total of 400,000 cubic yards, which was the episodic amount that we were planning on dredging from the St. Helens Bar a mile away. Additional measures, though, I mentioned this before. We got to get some grading on these features and vegetation. They got to be vegetated to be productive. So there it is. That was the plan. And this is how we're going to place dredge material. The dredge is somewhere down off the page, but the pipeline was going to come up, go underneath the nav channel, which it typically does, submerged pipeline, construct a landing zone out of dredge material, and then have the pipeline go into a downstream feature, and then a Y with the pipeline go into the upstream feature, and maybe some beach nourishment to allow the pipeline to be safe on the beach. That was the plan. And what it was going to do is it was going to lift up the elevations. This is acres versus elevation, and the precondition, and then the post terrain after we create these two features. And what we're going to do is we're going to create the zones of habitat by literally lifting up the terrain using dredge material. And so this is how we got to estimating the benefits with how much area are we creating in certain zones, and what kind of zones are good for warblers versus salmonids. And so basically, it's a couple of bar graphs that shows existing condition, acres versus habitat type below certain elevations, and then with project. You can see how it shifts when we build this feature on top of this bathymetry. everything shifts to a higher elevation, which is good for salmonids and warblers. So we're creating 8 acres for salmonids and 11 acres for warblers in the zone that they need. That's no effect of sea level rise or change hydrology. So the key here is 50-year planning horizon. We want to embrace potential effects of sea level change and possible regulation changes on the Columbia. We don't know what those are going to be. It's what's a scenario-based situation, and I'll show you that in a minute. At the mouth of the Columbia River, we have the potential under a certain scenario of getting 2-foot level of sea level rise at some point in the future. And that equates at low river flow, 1.2 foot of stage increase at river mile 86. And so what happens is the WIS project with sea level rise, you can see how WIS project, how the terrain shifts. It gets inundated, and then basically warblers have less area and salmonids have more area. The key here is what happens is that the features just adapt to rising river levels due to sea level change. So it's an adaptation scheme, and so we evaluated how this project would adapt over time to sea level change. Same thing with adding now a 15% flow increase. If the 2-year flow were somehow increased by 15% due to some normative flow scenarios by re-regulation, what would happen? Well, it would continue, the elevation, water elevation would continue to shift. Warblers would only be left with 2.5 acres, and the salmonids would get 15 acres. So that's how we evaluated how this project would function under a changed hydraulic climate. I'll go through very quickly the hydraulic considerations because we wanted to be sure we didn't create mistakes, potential changes in circulation. We didn't want to create a problem. And so what you see here is the existing condition, peak flow running through here. These little vectors are pointing downstream, and reds are high velocity and the blues are low velocity. That's the existing condition for the 1997 flow event, basically a 35-year event. Here's what it looks like for the with project condition. And you'll see increased velocity slightly in this tidal channel, but not on the bank line, not so much on the bank line, a little bit, but not much, okay? What's interesting, though, is by putting these features here, we're kind of reducing the flow coming through this tidal channel. So that can be a good thing. It's going to help stabilize the islands through here by reducing flow, increases flow through this tidal channel. So we understand that, but that's a really big flow event. What about just a normal summertime situation, ebb tide during 100 KCFS, a late summer flow? You can see existing condition on the left and with project on the right. Not a lot of change. There's going to be some changes in and around the islands themselves, but the main flow area doesn't change much. And that's, we don't want to create significant changes that are adverse. Same thing with the flood tide. It's kind of interesting, even at river mile 85, tides reverse during the summertime low flow river flow. And here you see the arrows pointing upstream. And there are some changes between the no project and with project condition. We evaluated those changes, and we determined that there was no significant adverse impact. Bottom line is that the river stage is not affected by this project. So the project does not create increased river stage, which is good. Currents within the area, the project does create a little bit of increased current in the main channel for the peak river flow condition, but it's not an extreme change, and we assess that through some sediment transport assessments. It's not a big deal. So we did our homework. No big changes expected. It's important to do that. Some projects can't afford that. CAP projects usually don't have the budget to do that. But in this case, what we're trying to do is step back into something we were doing on a regular basis 60 years ago, but we wanted to not make any mistakes the first time, so we did some extra work on that. So this is the project implementation. In 2017, the report, the CAP study, the feasibility report, was completed. It was reviewed, division reviewed it. We got comments from everyone. Comment and answer time is always so much fun, but it made the project better. It was completed in 2017. The assumptions were that we have sufficient dredge material available when we were to go implement in 19 or 20 for the project needs. Project needed 400,000 cubic yards to build both features. We assumed, through some rationale, we assumed that the pipeline was attainable to be deployed to build the upstream and downstream features. It turned out to be a problem. And then we assumed that turbidity would be minimal. Turbidity problems would be minimal due to the experience that we normally place dredge material using the same equipment on the river side of islands where the river is free flowing. So those assumptions got tested. And here's what happened. In reality, in 2020, when we tried to implement this thing, was that we ran into some walls, and we had to adapt in a hurry, starting in August, in order to construct in September. In August, we realized the dredging volume at St. Helens Bar was only going to be half as much what we needed. Logistic needs onshore required almost 40,000 cubic yards just to develop the landing area and beach support for that pipeline to go to the upstream feature. And then a real estate easement kind of came up and was imposed on us near the pipeline landing area. Those three things required us to adapt quickly to implement the project. So we revised the design to accommodate the dredge material volume constraints. We went through a lot of iterations, and what we arrived at was a reduced size downstream feature only to implement. And then we came through some revisions during construction. What happened is, at the beginning of August, we had this amount we thought we had, up to 200 cubic yards. But then as we started dredging the bar at St. Helens, we ended up getting more material than we initially thought. So then we had to build back some of the feature to accommodate more material, which was a good thing, but it was still a challenge. We expanded one of our features we expanded a shelf, an intertidal shelf, to make it more eco-function during construction. I got to say this: the Port of Portland is an A1. They're an A1 contractor for dredging. They know their stuff. They work with the owner who is us, the client, and they got this job done. Without their expertise and their professionalism, it would not have happened. They operate the dredge organ. Anyway, moving on. The point is, we also reduced the eastern extent of the downstream feature, so it would not encroach as much on the tidal channel. So thereby reducing encroachment even more, reducing the potential create current problems even more. We made it go away, basically. But the problem, one of the big problems, we realized turbidity exceedances. And that required shutdown periods of the dredge. And that was a problem because that's a capital piece of equipment with crews and everything running. And to shut it down is just an efficiency expensive killer. Quick post haste, Jessica Stokey was part of implementing a silt curtain in a hurry. She got that kind of preloaded and along with others, and we implemented a silt curtain, and then everything worked fine after that. And then the virus. Boy, that put a real crimp on personnel controls at the project site, which meant that we could, us designer and cubicle people could not go to the job site to help the dredgers figure out what to do in terms of adaptive management very easily. So a lot of challenges there. But we completed the project with 225,000 cubic yards of dredge sand placed within the downstream feature. We adapted our pipeline situation because we weren't going to build the upstream facility, and so that's what we did. This is what the pipeline outlay looked like, and this is how we started the project. This is the riverside looking to the shore, okay? And so the submerged pipeline comes up to a floating barge, and then it goes along a landing area. You see the landing area that the Port of Portland created, and then that landing area feeds to the island. And then on the other side, the bay side of the island, then we started building the feature, built it out, created a shelf, and then this is the existing woodland island with vegetation, and that's the new feature we were creating at the time. And then the bottom photos are just how the dredge material is placed. You can see the discharge point, and then the dozer working. I mean, that used to be 10-foot depth of water. Now it's a dozer running around moving material. We created the base, and then on top of the base, we created the habitat terrain we wanted to create. It was very efficient, started September 29th and completed October 10th. So here's some final pictures. This is near the end of completing the work, 200,000 cubic yards placed. This is a view downstream at the downstream end of the feature. And then this is the completed work on the upstream part of the feature looking downstream. So you see the long, this is the T-bone. We call it the T-bone. This is the shore connection, and then this is the T-bone part. shelf, and then the crest at 12 to 14 feet NAVD. So there is, during the construction, this is the bay side, and the landing is over on the riverside. Look at that turbidity. I mean, that is just someone who's like really adverse to turbidity. Just, you know, it's a reactive. It's almost like an allergy. You say the word and people, you know, freak out. The thing in here is that this dredge material had less than 4% fines, probably more like 2% fines. But it just takes a little bit of fines to make a lot of turbidity. And that's what kind of was a challenge for our operation. We used a sill curtain after shutting it down a couple of times, and that worked out really well. It's got a little floating boom on it, and then there's a curtain that hangs below about up to 6 feet, maybe 8 feet. And that, because the water depths were shallow, that really held the turbidity within our area of placement, and the Port of Portland was able to just be really efficient after that. A couple of views of what was created. We had Crest came in now Crest is stepping in because they're in charge of vegetation. And so, but that doesn't mean we just hand it off to them. We're collaborating closely with Crest to get that done. We had established the terrain. This is right after the project was completed. You see the landing on the riverside. It's its own feature. This thing got demolished by the river current, so that material got folded into the under the island shoreline. But this thing is sticking around, and that's what's going to be vegetated. And just, I'm going to conclude now. I've got about 3 more slides left. Thanks for hanging with me. So the key is vegetation, and making sure we put the right vegetation in the right spot on this new feature we create. So learn by analog, learn what's already out there. And so that's what we did. Willows and dogwood are in this elevation zone. And then grasses, sedges, and scrub shrub are in these zones through here. And so we're basically learning by, okay, this is what grows there. That's what we're going to plant in those elevation zones for the new feature. Cottonwoods are further up, higher, a little bit higher, but they get inundated during the 2-year flow. And then sparse trees upland. This little thing right here, this doesn't have many trees, and we don't want to have fortunately, we did not create any elevation that high in this feature. That's up pretty high at 6 meters NAVD. We didn't go anywhere near that. So that's good. We expect everything that we plant, if we put it in the right zone according to what we've seen, to grow on the new feature. And that's what the new feature looks like in terms of elevations, and you can kind of compare to where these other things live and grow. So we're going to have stuff growing down in the margins on that shelf, and then up on the crest, we'll have the cottonwoods. This thing is, with the top elevation for this feature is about 14 feet NAVD. And the ordinary high water, it's about, well, maybe a little bit higher than that. The point is, this feature gets submerged by 1 foot during ordinary high water events, which are the 2-year floods. And that's exactly what we want. We don't want it to wash away, but we do want it to be inundated from time to time. And there it is. Lessons learned. This is the last slide. So lessons learned for other projects. And I just want to emphasize that this is the first project we've done in 60 years of like building islands, purposely building islands or island features. So we had to relearn some stuff. And now that we've starting to relearn, getting this relearn curve going, we need to apply these lessons learned for other projects. This is not just a one-off. We don't want to just be happy with this. We got more work to do. 77% of the riparian area is gone. So we got lots of stuff to do with this. Seek out previous LCR, Lower Columbia River experiences. That's what we've done, but there's more lessons to be learned during this time period of 1900s to 1950s. That'll help us manage risk. Implement projects that have small to moderate scale before going big. That's what we did here, and that's what we should continue to do until we get really confident that we can go big without adverse consequences. Include resilient elements in our features. Address high river flows and climate change up front when we design these things. Evaluate potential effects of project on adjacent areas. So do the hydro modeling. You don't have to go whole hog, but do enough in order to manage risk, understand the risks that we're looking at so that we can say, yeah, we're pretty confident we're not going to create a problem. Verify real estate assessments for project access with sufficient lead time. We did do that in 2017. It's just that one of those islands actually was there before the Corps started adding more islands, and it was platted and it was owned by someone, and it took us forever to track that down. And we thought we had an answer, and we didn't. So we made a flying lead change. We got done with that, but just lesson learned on that. Plan for implementation deviations. So if we have to build a slightly different footprint or shift it, how we can handle that on the fly is to coordinate while we're doing the feasibility report or with coordinating the agencies for state agency review on a footprint that's slightly larger than we plan to build, so we can move stuff around and still be within environmental compliance. Anticipate last-minute changes, design changes. This is important for the office, the cubicle people, to coordinate with the quality control people on the ground, and we did that well with this project. Chuck Bobnick, QA person for the Corps, worked really well with Neil, the superintendent for Port of Portland. It was fabulous. Assume that turbidity may affect place in operation. Plan for options. Plan ahead for options on how to handle turbidity if it comes up. Because if it shuts you down, that's a lot of money just sitting there not working. Finally, this project provides an opportunity to I say learn by doing, but in this case, it's relearn by doing. Take the opportunity to apply new lessons to other project locations for targeted habitats. Keep learning and sharing. Just, talk, share, be happy. During the virus, it's hard to do that, but, we got to keep going. And then document and socialize results, the good results and the not so good results. And that's all I have for you all today. Sorry I'd used 30 minutes, but maybe we have an extra few minutes from Terry's efficient talk time span. I can address some questions if Kate so allows. Over.
Thanks, Rod.
Yeah, thanks, Rod.
We have plenty of time for questions. We have a couple that came through the chat. Matt, do you want me to take the questions? I can answer Jared's question, and then I'll turn the rest of them over to Matt. Jared asked, are there plans to replicate this or create similar features in the future? And yeah, the goal of the RSM, Regional Sediment Management Program, particularly for the lower Columbia River, is to have identify a network of sites and possible beneficial use projects that could be implemented in the future, not just by the Corps, but by other users in the channel, including ports and others, environmental groups. So yeah, this is sort of the first, the newest example that we're trying to implement up and down the Columbia River. And I will stop talking now, and Matt, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. So yeah, Rod, we had another question from Morgan Lee. First off, she said, awesome project. And she wanted to know what kind of monitoring will be used to determine what, if any, impact this has on shoaling and whether you see any accretion on this feature. I hope I said that word right.
Yeah, there's I think Ida Royer is in charge of what we call RME monitoring. It's research, monitoring and evaluation. What that is specifically for the species being targeted for benefit, to see if those species start to use the area, if they're present, and when and how many. So we're doing monitoring. We're working with Pacific Northwest Labs on that. So that's a really important. That's kind of like the third phase of this project. First phase is make the dredge material mounds. Second phase is to vegetate them successfully. And then third phase is to verify that the critters are using stuff as we had intended. There's a material moving out of the area. I'm trying to find maybe a picture of what we're looking at. Yeah. So there will be some shifting of we didn't build this feature. Let me try to go to one of the, sorry, I'm going to stop moving around here. We didn't build the upstream feature, but there's already this island already has a little spit that's starting to move out. So a couple of things. This embayment's going to be kind of like accidentally created, which will be really good. It's not going to close off, But this island chain continues to move around a little bit. We expect this feature to maybe slide down a little bit downstream, and then during the floods, this will slide downstream a little bit. We don't expect this feature to move material sufficiently to end up back in the Nass Channel. That's for sure. And during summertime, when the winds come out of the northwest, but some of this feature, this upstream part of it, will then slide a little bit further upstream. We expect this feature to be somewhat quasi-static. It's going to kind of shift. It's going to shift around a little bit, but we don't expect it to go away. That's one reason why we built the crest high enough is it's at the 2-year flood, and because the islands will take the brunt of the flow coming over during really high flow events, this feature will shift but not get wiped or washed away. Over.
Great. Thanks for answering that. And then the next question, I believe this is the last one in the chat. Michael Ott wanted to know if you revisited the benefit curve area versus elevation for the completed project.
Yes, that's a very good question. And we had our GIS section get into that. We have the terrain. They just have not been able to get the bandwidth. It's this project, this other project we're working on. What is it called? The DMMP. Anyway, that project's taking a little bit of bandwidth right now from some of our other resources, but it's on GIS's task list to do. And Mike, that's exactly the point, is to establish what the baseline footprint is in the area of the downstream feature we actually created, and then what the actual lift was. I can tell you that the acreage from both features was initially, trying to find these figures, the acreage initially was going to be about 25 acres total. And of just this downstream feature that we built, its acreage is going to be somewhere around 12, about 12 acres. So everything's relative to change to 12 acres, and we'll see. Yeah. The key is, though, the other thing is the cost. So we created less, but we spent less to create it also. If we actually pumped 400,000 yards, that's time and money. We only pumped about 240,000 yards, all said and done. So it's less cost, and we built less of the feature. But we'll look at that, and maybe we'll maybe next year we'll update what's going on at Woodland Islands. Have a 5-minute presentation on it. Over.
Sorry, I was muted. We just got one more question in from Austin. He said, you mentioned the project reduces flow passing behind Woodland Island. Is that accompanied by increased flow or velocities through FNC?
It might possibly be during the biggest flow events, and so the reduction in velocities is discernible, and I think that we could have done kind of like a calculation of continuity of how much flow is going back here versus in the channel width before and after the project. We did not do that, but based on the area, the channel area, and essentially depth and width, and the increment in flow increases versus what the volume of flow is going through the main stem Columbia, it's really small. I would say it'd be inconsequential. We actually did do a continuity check or a flow volume check of what actually goes between the cross section right up here versus the cross sections all through the island, and it's a very small proportion of flow goes behind the current island chain versus going down the river. It's I don't know, it's like less than 4%, less than 0.4%. It's ridiculously small. So even though there would be a shunting of flow going back, an increase of flow through the channel during this high flow event, it'd be inconsequential in the channel. Over.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, I believe that's it for questions.
Great. Hey, thanks for y'all's attention. Again, I'm privileged to present this on behalf of the whole team. It was really a labor of love that we all worked on. And that ends my presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rod. Are there any other questions for Rod before we move on?
Thank you all for your comments.
Can everyone see my slides?
Yep.
All right. Jessica, Greg, and myself are going to give an update on the upcoming work we have for this dredging season in FY21. I'm going to start us off with the mouth of the Columbia River. For the dredge essions, we have approximately 35 days starting at the end of August and through September. In this year, we will be utilizing the South Jetty site as well as taking the North Head site operational this year. So the past 3 years, we've done pilot projects out at the North Head site, and this will be the first year we are planning to take that site operational, thanks to a lot of coordination and hard work with our partners at the Lower Columbia Solutions Group. And so this year we are also targeting to increase quantities at those sites. So we're going to target 500,000 cubic yards at the South Jetty site and 400,000 cubic yards at the North Head site. The other thing I don't have on my slide here, but we are also looking to place additional material at the shallow water site with the dredge essions, in addition to the West Coast regional hopper that we'll be placing at the shallow water site. So we're targeting to try and get close to 2 million cubic yards into the shallow water site this year. We do have the West Coast Regional Hopper we do have an awarded contract. It was awarded to Dutra, and the dredge Stuyvesant will be coming out here this July. They will be working at the Columbia River, the mouth of the Columbia River, and main ship channel. And for the MCR, they will be working approximately 40 days in August and September, targeting about 1.3 to 1.8 million cubic yards. And then I also just wanted to mention the jetty repairs, which have been ongoing. So we completed repairs at Jetty A in 2016 and 2017. Then we worked on the North Jetty from 2018 to 2020. We completed that work last summer. And we also started work on the South Jetty, which is currently in progress. And those repairs should continue through 2023. And I'll turn it over to Jessica.
Thanks. First up is the Columbia River 43-foot deep shipping channel from the ocean to Vancouver. We were able to complete advanced maintenance dredging last fall, so the channel's in pretty good condition right now. There's a few areas of shoaling that will be dredged by the essions next week. And then our plan is a pretty typical dredging season for 2021. The Dredge Oregon is going to start in June, probably dredging near Longview with placement on Howard Island. And then the hopper dredges will show up in June or July to take care of the rest of the shoaling before we see those low river levels in the late summer. To sum it up, I would say we're as prepared as we can be for whatever our spring freshet brings us this year. The next project is the barge channel between Vancouver and Bonneville Dam. The dredge Yaquina is scheduled for her normal 7 days in August. The one thing to note is there's a new pretty heavy shoal encroaching into the channel that's being caused by the erosion of Reed Island near River Mile 126. So I've asked for an evaluation by our hydraulic engineers here in the district, and I'll have more information, I think, to share out on that, what the best plan is to take care of that shoal. And I think that's it for that slide. We have a clamshell dredging contract this year. We're calling it Oregon and Washington Clamshell. It's got work on the coast and work in the Columbia River. The plan is to advertise that in May, and then dredging, the window is between July and December. Order of work will start at Port Orford on the South Oregon coast, and then move up to the Baker Bay Channel near the mouth of the Columbia. Those are the base items, and then we have some optional work areas in this contract, and those are dependent on really if shoaling develops and if we've got the funding in place to do the work. So that includes the Longview Turning Basin, which is part of the Deep Draft Channel, and then we're working on an agreement right now with the Port of Longview to include the dredging of their berths as part of this contract also. The Old Mouth Powlett is right next to the Port of Longview, the federal channel there. And then the Lake River Channel is between Longview and Vancouver. I think that's it. Okay. Environmental coordination. So the 4 side channels shown here, are there 4 side channels? 3 side channels, just kidding. I can count. Tongue Point, Eloquman Slough, Lake River. Oh no, there's 4. I just can't see. And the 20-foot deep channel in Oregon Slough haven't been dredged by the Corps for many years. So we're going through the environmental coordination process for these channels that involves an ESA consultation with NOAA Fisheries or NIMS. And also we need to update our NEPA documents. So as part of this update, we're also going to include our ongoing maintenance at Baker Bay and Chinook. And then we're going to finish the coordination that we need to use an upland placement site at Skipanon. And then you'll see there's some additional work we're going to do with DEQ to get a 401 certificate and to get our coastal zone compliance done with Oregon CLCD for those Oregon side channels. And that is all in progress. We've received great funding support for the past few years for the pile dike. I've got a photo here showing a pile dike with the king pile marker at the channelward end. The king pile marker is a really tall pile that's visible even when the river levels are high. It's meant to be a visible marker of the pile dike location where it's submerged. The old king piles were those tall timber dolphins, and the new king piles that we installed last fall are these single steel piles with a sign on top that you see in the photo. This year, we're doing everything we can to be ready for full functional repairs at these highest priority systems. So that's Sand Island, Baker Bay, Cottonwood Island, and then Miller, Rice, Kamakwe, and then Washougal up in the barge channel. So that involves going through the evaluations, designs, getting plans and specs ready. And then the construction timing is really going to be dependent upon future funding for construction. So we have design funds, but not construction funds yet to start pile dike repairs. And then one thing I wanted to mention that I didn't have in my slides was that for the lower Willamette, there's a federal navigation channel there. We don't dredge it very often because there's a lot of environmental compliance that goes into it, being in a CERCLA site. But we are in the middle of the sediment evaluation process for the 2 highest priority shoals in the Willamette River, and that's Post Office Bar and the Albina Turning Basin. The sediment evaluation is the first step. It will help determine what our placement site options will be, and then we're going to work on the rest of the environmental compliance pieces next year, and then we'll seek funding to perform the dredging. So it's at least a couple of years out before we would be able to do dredging in the Willamette. Sorry, Kate. Next slide. We also have environmental coordination in progress for the pile dike. So along with the engineering side of the design and plans and specs, we also need to get our environmental compliance in place. The main pieces going on right now are Sand Island pile dike and Baker Bay pile dike. So Sand Island, we've started the process back in 2020, and then it's ongoing in 2021, and then we're anticipating completion of the last pieces in 22. Baker Bay is getting started this year with our environmental compliance, and then hopefully we'll also be finished with that in 2022. And you can see we've got a lot of coordination to do with federal agencies and state agencies for these projects. All right, my last slide here is a Lower Columbia River Channel Maintenance Plan. So this is a plan for how we're going to maintain the 43-foot channel, so the deep draft ship channel in the Columbia River for the next 20 years. We need the plan because our existing dry material placement sites are filling up, and so we're going to need to identify more places to put the material. To get back to Sally's question from earlier about what is limiting in-water placement, so this is one way that we're looking for opportunities to place material along more riverbanks than what we have approvals to do now and in shallower water depth. And then the benefit of that is that we can keep more material within the river system without increasing the amount of shoaling and dredging that we'll do in the channel. So this plan is really focused on that. And it's jointly being prepared between the Corps and the ports that are listed here. So we're developing an environmental impact statement. There's also a State of Washington environmental public review process. And we had a public scoping period for this project way back in fall of 2017, and then we've been developing it ever since. It's very complex for 100 miles of channel and the volumes that we are dealing with every year. But there will be another public review and comment period for the draft plan and EIS when it's ready. So be looking out for that sometime in the next, I think, year or two. And I think that's all I have there. So I'll turn it to Greg.
Well, thanks, Jessica. I think I want to pause. I saw a few questions coming in. Matt, would you mind reading some of those questions?
Yeah, I only saw one come in on my end. It's from Terry O'Rourke. Has there been any progress regarding beneficial use of gravel or other material in coordination with local sponsors or other partners?
I'm sorry, I don't think I quite understand the question.
So my question is, with any of the dredging, there's material that's placed either in the ocean or uplands, but one of the other options is to actually utilize the material, especially the gravel, and just wondering if there's been any progress made in exploring that beneficial use that could be a benefit to local sponsors or other partners in the area.
I think I can take this, Jessica. I think specifically I'm thinking of Rogue River. Most of the material that we're dealing with on the Columbia River is in gravel. It's coarse grained sand. But for the Rogue River, there has been some limited communication with industry on use of gravel over the years for both the port of, the Chetco project and Rogue River project, and hasn't really had a lot of, I don't want to say interest, but the industry currently doesn't have the equipment to remove that material. So I think that that's an ongoing thing that we'll see more of in the future, but those conversations will continue on the Corps side with industry. And I'm sure Greg might have a different view when he gets to his projects. Did that help answer your question, Terry?
Yes, thank you.
I'll speak briefly about the State of Oregon MOA that we have with the Corps. So going back to 2013, a lot of the low-use ports were not funded, and through the President's budget and the Congressional work plan. So the State of Oregon and the Corps of Engineers entered into a memorandum of agreement where the state would fund the Corps up to $5 million per year for 5 years for critical minimum maintenance, particularly for the breaking bars at the low-use ports along the coast. That MOA expired in 2017. It was renewed in 2018 and is good through 2022. And just recently, the state of Oregon has requested to renew that MOA again for another 5 years. The good news is that while we utilized this in 2013 and in 2014, we really haven't had a need. We've seen a lot of those low-use ports funded through the federal system. So, but it's a good partnership, and I know that those low-use ports are very important to the state of Oregon and the economy, and both local, regional, and to the state of Oregon. So we're happy to be continuing with that partnership with the state. And I will turn it over to Greg.
Hello again, everybody. I'd like to give you a brief overview of what's happening on the coast here. We're going to be keeping our government dredges busy this year. Chitco, we have about 8 days scheduled for June. Rogue, about 8 days also in June. I'll cover this more in detail with what we're planning a little on this other slide. Coquille, 4 days in July. Bay, 25 days. That'll happen between May and September. Umpqua, 4 days in July, and hopefully 5 days in September. The days are solid. The schedule of the months are always variable with weather. Usla, 6 days in June, 2 days in July. In Quinta Bay, we've already accomplished 8 days last October and scheduling 27 days in July through September. At the dredge Essions, we're planning on July to August time frame for 18 days in the entrance. And while we're on the government dredges, I just want to take a brief time out and just acknowledge and thank the 4 crews of the Quinta and Essions for their hard work and dedication during COVID. They really put out an outstanding effort and really kept us going on the coast and other places. But just want to take a minute and acknowledge their work. They faced a lot of challenges. And also a big thank you out to our survey crews. They kept nonstop working during COVID and didn't miss a beat. So just want to take that time to acknowledge some groups and within channels and harbors that really came through. Next slide, please. As far as the coastal contracts this year, we have one in Depot Bay where we're dredging the sediment retention basins, about 2,000 cubic yards. We're hoping that'll happen in July-August time frame. Port Orford, that was covered, Jessica covered that earlier. That's part of the Oregon washing clamshell contract. We're hoping to get about 15,000 cubic yards in July. And Rogue River, we're hoping for about 405,000 cubic yards in July-September time frame. As Terry alluded to earlier, we did not get the dredge last year because of some shoaling in. We have a parallel path project this year where we're going to try to get the dredge Yaquina in, but if that does not work, we have some contractor options to open up the entrance and get them in. We are looking to remove on the contractor option about 130,000 cubic yards from the entrance, boat basin access channel about 75,000 cubic yards, and the advanced maintenance dredging up above the federal channel between the 101 dredge right around 200,000 cubic yards. We're also working a parallel path with internal and external shareholders to make all this come together and happen by that July time frame. Next slide, please. Some of the other coastal projects we have going on, we have a Tillamook North Jetty repair that is currently, the plans and specs are being completed. As of currently, we hope to advertise around the 26th of August and award the 20th of September. Tillamook South Jetty is currently, plans and specs are being worked on, and we are just awaiting funding, hopefully in 22. We are also doing repairs on the Coos Bay North Jetty. So this is currently wrapping up in plans and specs, and this is scheduled to advertise the 12th of August and award the 27th of September. All the projects that are funded, we do plan to award them this fiscal year and start work next fiscal year. Thank you, everybody. Any questions?
Matt, were there any questions in the chat for Greg?
No, none that I saw pop up.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Thanks, Greg. I think I have the last slide here. The Regional Sediment Management Program, I kind of alluded to this earlier with Jared's question when Rod was presenting on Woodland Island. Our only RSM plan that we are working on this fiscal year is continuing with the Lower Columbia River Regional Sediment Management Plan. And this year we're working with stakeholder groups and resource agencies to develop conceptual designs for beneficial use at three sites in the Columbia River. So we're currently trying to determine which those 3 sites would be. So far we've held 2 public workshops, and the next one will be coming up here in May. And then in addition to those workshops that we're holding, the USGS is continuing to collect data on the Columbia River that will be used to create a sediment budget. So that's sort of what's going on with the Regional Sediment Management Program at Portland District. And I believe that's our last slide. So we'll open it up to questions. Let's see, I see Rod had a comment. Woodland Islands project is an odyssey. And then he just thanked everybody. So. And I don't see any hands raised. So at this point in our agenda, we are going to move on to the sediment quality team, unless there's any questions or comments for Greg, Jessica, or myself. Okay, James, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Kate. This is James Holm. James McMillan is going to be sharing our presentation for the sediment quality team. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yep, I can hear you, and I see your slide.
All right. Wait for James to get on. James, if you're talking, you're on double mute or something.
There we go. Sorry.
Over. Got it.
All right. Okay. So this is our, this year we're covering 3 years of updates, past work from FY19 and upcoming work. Again, we're the sediment quality team, 3-member team in the Waterways maintenance section. And I'm the team leader, James McMillan. James Holm will also be presenting, especially the work that the Portland Sediment Evaluation Team did. And then we also have team member Dominic Abalier, who's one of our sediment quality specialists. So structure of our presentation, we'll cover the last 2 years, FY19 and FY20, since we missed a an annual dredging coordination meeting last year. We're putting it all into this one this year. And then we'll also highlight work that's planned for this fiscal year. James Holm will discuss what's planned for the regional sediment evaluation team and what's been done, and then also go over the Portland sediment evaluation team work. And finally, we'll just let everyone know about some upcoming public meetings that are on the horizon. So just a little bit about the sediment quality team. We support our navigation program by performing sediment characterizations for compliance with Clean Water Act and the Ocean Dumping Act, also known as the Marine Protection, Research, and Sanctuaries Act. Our team also coordinates with the EPA on the use of the ocean dredge material disposal sites along the Oregon coast. We're also a technical resource for any regional sediment management initiatives in the district. We're the center of expertise for implementing the sediment evaluation framework for the district. And as I mentioned, James Holm is the team leader for the Portland Sediment Evaluation Team, co-led with Bridget Lorman from the US EPA. And James and I both also sit on the Northwest Regional Sediment Evaluation Team representing Portland District, and that's a larger interagency team that covers the states of Oregon, Washington, and Idaho, and has both state and federal representation there. So the work that we performed over the last 2 fiscal years, quite a bit in that time frame, sampling from looking downstream in the Columbia. We sampled the mouth of the Columbia, the Baker Bay West Channel, also known as the Oahu Channel, Chinook Channel. Skipping River was done in 2020. We also did Cathlamet Bay, also it's next to Tongue Point by the Coast Guard station there on the upstream side of Tongue Point. Skamakaway, the old mouth of the Cowlitz. We did some work for the Howard Island Sump project. Lake River was sampled very early in FY19. I did some work for the Vancouver Turning Basin, the Oregon Slough downstream shallow draft channel, and the upstream shallow draft channel, which is above I-5 basically. Sampling of Vancouver to the Dalles, the barge channel. The December before last, we sampled 2 critical shoals in the Willamette, one at the post office bar at about River Mile 2.2, and then also the Albina Turning Basin at River Mile 10. And then the only coastal work we did in that time period was to characterize a small shoal in front of the Gold Beach Boat Basin in the Access Channel, and that was performed in 2019, I believe. Excuse me. With respect to ocean disposal site surveys and monitoring, back towards the end of 2019, we participated in the EPA-led surveys for Siuslaw ocean disposal sites and the Umpqua ocean disposal sites. And then we also performed a baseline survey to select a new ocean disposal site at the Rogue River at Gold Beach. And we've so far narrowed down the area to an area just to the southwest of the existing disposal site. So that's still a work in progress, and we're coordinating with the Environmental Protection Agency on that. Being the district sediment or the district's sediment center of expertise, we also do some work on our reservoirs and dams. So we also did some work at the Bonneville Powerhouse 2. Did some work at Detroit Reservoir and at the Cougar Reservoir as well. James Holm, you want to talk a little bit about this BLM project?
Yeah, so we also did some work for other federal agencies. So for BLM land management, they have a small dam called the Holt Reservoir, and they're looking about doing some repairs to that dam or evaluating different options. So they need some help doing a sediment characterization of the material stored in the dam. So we helped them with that a couple years ago and wrapped up that suitability determination memo in 2019. Over.
Let's see, and then we, like I said, we support some of the regional sediment management initiatives, and so, and the information that we help to collect helps inform those projects. So we wrapped up a contract where a buoy was deployed off the North Head. That helped give us some information about current and wave patterns in the proposed North Head site that Kate mentioned earlier. Like she said, we'll be bringing that operational this year, and the plan is to place about 400,000 cubic yards there. We also wrapped up a acoustic Doppler current profiler investigation in Baker Bay. We also worked on supporting the regional sediment management plan for the Lower Columbia River, and also worked with our Engineering Research and Development Center on some investigations for the Eagle Creek fire that occurred up in the gorge in 2017. Also, we also support work in the Portland Harbor coordination efforts there. James Holm is really instrumental on our team in doing that. And James, did you want to add anything about your coordination on Portland Harbor?
I'll talk about that a little bit more in depth when we get to FY21 on the other work we do for our district missions in the Lower Willamette.
Okay, very good. And then we also performed some sediment investigations in support of the Tillamook Bay, the South Jetty repair there for an offloads facility. So for this year, we have a really busy year. It's almost as busy as the last 2 years combined. We have all of these projects to sample this year. Tongue Point has already been sampled, but we wrapped up the biological characterization early in this fiscal year. Pardon me. Let's see, then, oh, sorry. Somebody was making lunch and I had to shut it down. So let's see. This year we also have plans to use biological testing for those 2 shoals in the Lower Willamette River. We're wrapping up Oregon Slough shallow draft channel sediment testing. We have work was, or sediment sampling was just performed at Tillamook Bay in Depot Bay earlier this week. In June, we have sediment sampling at Coos Bay and the Charles City Channel, just for the routine sediment characterization of that federal project. And then further down the southern Oregon coast, we have Coquille River, the Rogue River, and Chetco River that we'll all be sampling this year. And then this year for ocean surveys, EPA has a major monitoring event planned for, I believe, September is what we're shooting for. It may occur earlier, I'm not sure yet. And we'll be participating in that. The Corps has a contract in place to prepare the site management and monitoring plans for the Siuslaw ocean dredge material disposal sites. We're also working with EPA this year to expand Coos Bay Site H, collecting the information to support the expansion. And so we'll be working with them over the next couple of years to get that site expanded. And then finally, as I mentioned earlier in the talk, we'll also be looking to select a new ocean dredge material disposal site at Rogue. In terms of regional sediment work this year, we're engaged in the Lower Columbia River Regional Sediment Management Plan, and we're currently just in the early review phase for the mouth of the Columbia River Regional Sediment Management Plan, but that's still a work in progress. And James Holm, you can take it away now.
Thanks, James. Two things that we do for the district in Portland Harbor, Lower Willamette. We have a lot of coordination weekly, sometimes daily, with EPA and Oregon DEQ for dredging and disposal of sediment that comes out of Lower Willamette River. Thinking at the project level as well as like long-term, what do we need to help support EPA achieve their remediation goals in Portland Harbor. So always a challenging topic and always enjoyable to work with EPA and ODQ and other agency partners on projects. And then every once in a while, we're also provide support to U.S. Moorings as they go through their work on that site, particularly what we can do to help support coordination with EPA as well. Next slide. So here's the update with the reset. That's that regional sediment evaluation team that James mentioned earlier that covers Idaho, the state of Washington, and the state of Oregon. So in FY18, that was the last time we updated the sediment evaluation framework, the SEF. So that was a big lift at the time. And not much occurred in FY19. FY20, as Jared mentioned earlier, he replaced Cheryl Karuba at Northwestern Division, and one of the many hats that Cheryl and Jared wore was being the reset chair. That's a co-chair that they also use with EPA Region 10 to chair the reset. So that was something that occurred this last year. Moving forward for the rest of this year and into next year, there'll be some minor updates to the SEF, things like typos, clarifications, just minor changes. So we're collating what needs to be changed and updated, and then based on what that is, maybe we'll have a new version of the SEF. Maybe we'll just do a minor errata update, something like that. So that will be to figure out in the next 1 to 2 years. Next slide. James mentioned earlier some of the things that we do. So PSET, that's the Portland Sediment Evaluation Team. That's the local review team for implementation of the SEF. And by local, I mean the state of Oregon, not like just in the city of Portland. So we implement the dredge material evaluation framework, or dredge material characterization using the SEF on dredging projects, as well as ecosystem projects as needed. A big portion of our work is not just the federal navigation channel dredging that the Corps does, but the regulatory permits that are issued under the Clean Water Act as well. So between those two main sources of projects. It keeps the PSET busy on a weekly basis, reviewing projects and sampling and determinations of suitability. Listed at the bottom of that slide are the particular agencies of the PSET, the Corps, which the person is myself and Dominic Duvalier, EPA, which is Bridget Lorman, NOAA is Tom Houseman, U.S. Fish and Wildlife is Jeremy Buck, Department of Ecology is Laura Noye, and then with ODQ is Pete Anderson. Next. This is a generic diagram of, the PSET process, depending on if we're just doing a level 1 review. You can think of that as like existing information report. Do we need to test or not, or can they move forward? Level 2A is a physical and chemical characterization of the dredge material. A level 2B is actually biological testing, where you'd collect sediments and then you grow the various organisms on to see what their responses are in terms of mortality or growth rate. So this is just a very simplified version of that process of how we step through it to get to our suitability determinations. Key point is, this is something that can be done in a matter of weeks. It's something that can take, well over a year, as the data comes in and we have contamination to manage. Next slide. So here's a snapshot of many of the projects we reviewed in the last 2 years, in FY19, FY20. It's been pretty busy. We had 16 navigation projects from the Corps side that came in. We did 14 evaluations for the ports in Oregon or in the lower Columbia on the Washington side. But the ones that underline are projects that occurred in Portland Harbor, so those have an extra layer of coordination with EPA cleanup program and ODQ cleanup to make sure, the determinations and the dredging we're doing fit within their efforts for Portland Harbor. We had many other dredging projects throughout the state as well, and we had some habitat restoration projects that range from, a dam removal to notching over the last 2 years as well. So in total, we had 86 projects, about that many project reviews. Sometimes we looked at a project multiple times in the last 2 years. So we're hovering in the upper 40s is kind of like what number of projects that we get completed each year. Next slide. What we're looking at so far in FY21, which started October of 2020. James mentioned earlier in our presentation, we have those many characterizations we're doing on our federal projects, including we're going back out to the lower Willamette River to sample again at Post Office Bar and Albany Turn Basin to do those biological tests. We have one for the Port of Portland, one for the Port of Astoria, just one so far in Portland Harbor, a few other small project reviews that we've done throughout the year. So we're in the low 20s. We're a little more than halfway through. So even with COVID, probably going to still, break 40 for the year in terms of number of projects that come through PSET. Last year we were out there, that photograph, that was during our challenging wildfire season. We still had to get out there and get our work done. We had our masks on as best we could, and managing COVID and wildfire smoke was definitely a challenge, but our contractors and staff were able to get the job done. Next slide. So wrapping up, we have some public meetings related to sediment evaluations for those of you that are into such things. We have the virtual SMARM, which is out of the state of Washington. Their dredge material program has this every year. We're doing a virtual one, and it's next week, this coming Wednesday, May 5th. Later in this fall, WIDA's Pacific chapter is hoping to have a fall meeting, actually in Seattle, at the end of October. It's supposed to be in person, so keep your eyes on that one. And then the month after that, here in Portland, CTAC, which is the Society of Environmental Toxicology and Chemistry, they're having their annual meeting here in Portland in November. And again, that was also tagged to be in person as well. So we'll see how that plays out. Next slide. So a big thank you to everybody who helps us get our work done. So Waterways maintenance section that we're in, the hydro survey section that provides a bunch of information and helps us plan how we're going to be doing our sampling events. based on where we're going to be dredging, the regulatory branch for the many projects that keep us busy, all of our state and federal agency partners, whether we're talking PSED or Portland Harbor, everything we do is by consensus, so it works better when we're all pulling the rope the same way. The public ports and the Lower Columbia Solutions Group, and then, of course, our contractors that we use on a project-by-project basis. We can't do our work without them as well. James, did you have any last comments or questions?
Thanks, James. No, we like James said, we couldn't do all our work without help from all these folks. So I'd like to reiterate his thanks. And I think that's it for us. We can open it up to questions.
Thanks, James and James. I haven't seen any questions come through the chat. Are there any questions that people want to ask for the sediment quality team? All right. Well, if there aren't any specific questions for James and James, this brings us to our wrap up and open discussion or any questions. Is there anyone that has any sort of overall questions or comments or anything? The slides will be made available. I am not sure if we'll be able to post those on our website, but I will find out and send the information out to the group on where they will be available. But yes, all the slides will be made available. All right. Well, I don't see any other questions or see any hands raised. So I guess we can wrap this meeting up about 20 minutes early, unless I'll just throw it out there to everyone if there's any other comments or questions. But I appreciate huge participation on this, and thank you to all of the presenters. Virtual meetings are always hard, but this was a success, I think, and thanks, everybody.
Good job, Kate, for leading the discussion.
Thanks.
Thanks, all.
Thanks.